There's something you want to talk about, and I'm interested in talking about that because I think it's important. But there is something I want to ask about first. A 2 minute and 14-second detective run, seriously? I mean, really? Is that possible? How did you do that?
Well,
I mean, here's the thing, Penny. Here's the thing. I could see our team, my team, Murphy and myself, doing like a 2 minute and 14-second master exterior if all 4 hides were out. Like, and I knew that I didn't have to clear the rest of the area. But for a detective where it's unknown, 5 to 10, talk me through that.
okay. So Zest just drives to odor. So, and she has judges that she really likes because their odor and her hide placement makes sense to her. So there were only, I think there were 6 hides. There might have been 5. And I just don't go back. So if she hits a hide, I just move on and I don't waste my time. If she clears an area quickly and moves on, then I just keep going with her. And in this search in particular, there was a bunch of tables which had food underneath it. And I was just like, I'm not even going to fight this for you. We're just not going to even go there. So I missed an entire section and just got lucky. But,
Okay.
she was going for the food, and I was just like, no, because if there was odor, she'd be going for odor. So I'm just going to miss out these 6 tables where a lot of people went around the tables, and I just chose not to. It was a gamble, you know. I don't really. It's not that I don't care, but I'm enjoying pushing the envelope.
Yeah, it's a different philosophy. All right, so this is Alert Scent Work. I'm Scott, Murphy and Kiva's dad, and today I'm talking again with Penny Scott Fox, Zest and Tabor's mom, and I do want to circle back around this because I think there's an interesting conversation here in philosophy of how to do detective. I think you've done a great job, and you have a dog that has really trained drive to odor. Myself, I have a dog that will drive to odor, but like not to the extent, meaning if he's kind of not in odor and we haven't covered an area, I have to kind of take him there because he loses motivation, right? It doesn't sound like that's a thing that you have at all. And I think my instance is probably more the case, at least around here. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it depends on your foundation. And I think that's what it all stems down to. I teach dogs very, very young to drive to odor. And I'm of the philosophy of putting them straight on odor and not pairing with food. So, right from the get go, my dogs understand at a very early age that odor is very valuable. And I even had, my litter of Zest puppies at 5 weeks of age doing scent work. And we started them off pairing it with food for the first couple of rounds, and then we didn't. And it's my famous bowl exercise, but it really teaches them to drive. And both my girls are pretty greedy. If there's food on the ground, they'll go for the food. But if there's odor there, they'll choose odor.
Here's my observation of our team, right? So Murphy's my first dog, and I also put him on odor pretty quickly, and we did a lot of backyard stuff for, I don't know, 2, 3 years before we competed. But as you move up through the levels in novice, if you don't have the training background that you do, or now that I'm aware of, if I had a new dog, this would change for me. In novice and advanced, and even excellent to some extent, we're in odor all the time. So
Yeah.
then as we got up to detective, where there could be big blank areas where we're not in odor for a minute or two, he is not used to that. So he's like, I've been out here for 30 seconds. There's no odor. There must not be odor because that's not his experience. Does that make sense? I think that's what we struggle with. And I think that's what a lot of people that are just beginning and haven't trained it quite the way that you did struggle with.
So I think there's something to be really learned here, where practice having blank areas where the dogs search for 40 seconds and then get out. And if they're not having a change in behavior or driving to something, then it's possible there's nothing going on, and they can move on to the next area. And if you're worried about it, you can always come back. But what I see as a judge is that people spend a lot of time clearing areas round and round and round, and the dogs get bored and they get frustrated and just like, why are we still here when next door I'm going to hit odor right away? So that's how I get these exceptionally fast times with Zest, is because I let her drive the search and I just follow her. I don't really need to be there. If somebody could be feeding her cookies, she could care less about me. It's really anybody could run her, and maybe somebody should, because it's a lot of fun, and I trust her. I never question her. I never go, oh, let's go back and check here. If we've cleared it, if she leaves an area, I assume that she's found that all there is to be found there, and I go back.
And again, that's a different experience for what me and my team has. And I think a lot of people that I talk to have. Like, for example, I have to have a strategy in detective where if I go into a space and my dog finds the first hide, he might run off and there might be another 2 or 3 hides there. So I kinda have to intentionally say, "All right, we found one hide. There could be another here, so we're gonna hold for a second, and I'm gonna give him the opportunity to find that."
So to to make that more solid, stand in front of the hide that he's just found and take a second and recast him, and he will go on to another hide if there's one there. And if there isn't, then he'll say, "Well, let's go
Hmm,
on to the next area."
alright, I'll try that. I'll try
Yeah,
that,
I
yeah.
mean, that's how I started getting these high speed searches was I stand in front of you see me do it all the time. I stand in front of the hide, so I actually changed that odor picture for her, and she's fast. So I reward her and I stand in front of her for a second, reload up with food in my hand, and head on. And by then she's either hitting odor or she's left the area completely. And I run her on leash because I like that. We've had this conversation before. I like that connection with the leash with her. I can feel her changing in behavior through the leash. And that, if you blindfolded me, I think I could still do the search. We should try it. We've had that conversation too.
Not only did you have an amazing time in that detective run, which is awesome, but that was also your 40th detective Q, is that accurate?
Yeah.
Alright, well, I gotta give you some love for that. That is amazing.
Well,
Uh,
we go, so our club, we have, AKC doesn't acknowledge this, but our club does. We have a bronze, silver, and gold detective title. So bronze is 20 detective Qs, silver is 35, and gold is 50. So I'm going for my 50.
you're going for your
Um,
gold. I love it.
I'm going for my gold. And then, because Taber's already eligible for detective, but I'm waiting for Zest to get her gold so she can move over and let Tabs have a go. But I wanted her for her 50th, so that it'd be kind of cool.
Congratulations on that amazing milestone. That is just incredible.
I think it's really fun.
Do you know what your Q percentage is to get that 40? Do you kinda know what your percentage was?
I'd need to check on We Smell Better, which is, of course, the most brilliant website. I think I'm probably at about 95%.
What?
She's pretty good.
Wow. Alright.
Yeah, I've failed a couple, not many, but it's just because I choose to run under certain judges, and Zest understands their hide placement.
Got it,
And
got it,
you know,
got it.
if I just went to random searches, maybe we wouldn't be so successful. I don't know. I would try that out. Um, but I'm all for it being a fair search for her, and and she's a she's a pretty challenging dog. If she doesn't like it, she can be pretty tricky. More so in agility. If she doesn't like the course, then she just bites me. So yeah, yeah, she does. She just turns around and bites because this is
That's
stupid.
funny.
I'm not gonna go
Yeah.
that way. It's just like so. So to achieve this, I have to make sure that she's in the right space. And you will see, we're running under Steve tomorrow for 2 trials. I'm sure she'll be great. It'll be fun. Super new.
Yeah, you know what? So this I don't wanna get too deep into this right now because I need to think about what you said about not frustrating your dog. And again, it's a team to team thing, right? Like my Murphy doesn't tend to get super frustrated. So, he's not exactly enthusiastic sometimes if he's not in odor, but he will go back and check places for me.
Yeah.
I kinda like the challenge of having a judge that I don't know much about, or maybe I've just heard a little bit of recon on and trying to beat them in their detective queue. Like, right? I think it's 2 different games. You're playing the let's see how far we can push the envelope with the time. You show under known judges that, your dog understands. I kinda at this point like the challenge of going, all right, can I beat this judge even though they might not be exactly right for my dog?
Yeah, that's not a bad philosophy to have, and I'm not saying that's not one way to go. I've seen and hear about a lot of detective searches that are just plain stupid, and I'm not going to put my dog through that. It's just not going to
Fair.
happen.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think if you found a judge like that, it's like, what's the point of trying to beat them? Because there are some instances where odor just is not available, and there's nothing you could have done about it. But there are some where maybe it was just like if you just kind of went, all right, what if we detail here just a little bit because this looks like a
Yeah,
place that could be a little tricky. I kind of enjoy that right now. So I
yeah,
don't know. We'll see.
and I will see. And maybe once if I'm judging in Texas, and I might there's a judge there that I haven't trialed under before. I might I'll have Zest with me. I might enter and see how she does.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not. I just there's been some searches that I've heard of that I just would be just like not happening.
All right,
But this
let's move to
whole conversation that I want to have with you about pressure.
yes, let's do that. I was gonna say, let's just move on right now. Taking it too seriously, is that what this is about when you say pressure? So you had reached out and said, you've seen kind of a trend recently, judging and participating, that some people are putting too much pressure on themselves, the team, the judges. Talk to me what you meant by that, and then let's dig deep.
Well, I think it goes on each level. So there's really four conversations. There's the pressure on the dog, which is the first thing that everybody thinks about that you have to cue, you have to get it. You really want to get your detective title before your dog turns 5 or whatever your criteria is, or you've made it in your goals list that you're going to get your detective title in 15 goes out of, you know, get 10 cues in 15 or whatever. That's a huge amount of pressure. And even something as simple as the lunar cycle could affect how your dogs are working on that particular day. So the pressure is unrealistic. And while I have a pretty high cue rate in detective with all of my dogs, I don't put that pressure on them. I expect them to do well, but if they don't, I just go, oh, well, it just didn't happen today. It's not the end of the world. I still get the best dog going home. But time and time again, I see these teams who just break down and cry and have these things of just like, oh my God, I can't believe that that's a no. And I'm just like, it's it's dogs sniffing Q-tips. It's not the end of the world. Your dog is not a bomb dog. Your dog has not just obliterated an entire platoon in Afghanistan. They just missed a burnt Q-tip. And and that upsets me. I get really upset because I find it's insulting to me as a judge that they blame me because they didn't get the cue. And it's just like, actually, it's not my fault. Your dog was trying to tell you and you chose not to do it. I had one competitor, it doesn't matter who it was, who said, I don't believe you, but I'm going to call alert anyway. And I was just like, why did you do that? You didn't believe your dog. Your dog wasn't actually even alerting. You even verbalized that you weren't going to call it. Yet, for some reason, you did. I had no words for that, really. I didn't know how to explain that one. So that's pressure, and it's not fair on the dogs. And the dogs deserve it. They're the best.
What do you see when people put pressure on their dogs? What do you see from the dog's perspective? What happens to their dog in that search?
Well, it depends on the dog. So some dogs really love pressure, like Zest could care less. Pressure's nothing to her. But a dog that's slightly sensitive, or the owner starts to behave in a really weird way that they don't normally act like this, they're acting really funny, then the dogs just shut down, or they just go, I don't know what's happened to you. I'm gonna do an alert because I think that's gonna make you feel happy. Really no odor reaction. They're just doing something to appease the owner, and then they get a no, and then the owner gets upset. And I'm just like, well, the dog didn't actually even sniff. They're just trying to calm you down. They're trying to give you a calming signal to calm you down, and yet you misinterpret that as as an alert. And so,
What a brilliant little insight there. The fact that if you're out there putting too much pressure on your dog and you're like, I don't understand why my dog false alerted. I've heard a lot of reasons why a dog might false alert. It's never lying. There's
yep,
some reason that they're doing that behavior, right?
it's
And
appeasement.
they're doing that behavior to calm their owner down, to try to chill their owner out if it's a more sensitive dog. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep, absolutely. I see it time and time again. Time and time
Wow.
again. Yeah, and it's sad, and then they get upset, and it's just like, actually, your dog was just doing his job. It was calming you down. But the problem is that's not what they want, and it's
Right. Because the dog has to make a decision in that situation. They have
yeah,
to decide what's more important to me right now. I've heard this called as a hierarchy of behavior. What's more important in this scenario? Me continuing to search for odor, and some dogs that might be on their hierarchy of behavior, the more important thing, or is it to calm my owner down? And to some dogs that might be more important, especially in scent work where these are pets, right? These are not hardened professional dogs that can block all that other input out. So that makes a difference. Is that
yeah.
a good analysis, do you think?
That's very good, and I see it time and time again, and it's just sad because the dogs are doing their best, and the problem is with this all or nothing, and I would never take away the all or nothing qualifying um, part of detective. I love it. I think it's really important. I don't want it to be dumbed down. I don't want it to change. But people need to be able to handle the pressure and know that they may not always get the cue. But as long as they learn something from the search, then I think it's a win. And I try to when I'm judging, I try to, especially in detective, I try to say, well, but look at what you got. You may have missed one hide, but everything was lovely. You were connected. You went through the search area. You trusted your dog. Just because you missed one hide doesn't mean to say it was a bad search. It just wasn't a qualifying run. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's a great way to reframe it that's really helped me, and I tend not to look at the positive, so I had to work at it, and I know I have friends also that tend not to look at the positive, so we've all had to work on it, but it makes it a lot more enjoyable when you can go, "There were 9 things that went right in this run, and
Yeah,
1 thing did not, so let's celebrate that." I've got the
exactly.
most amazing dog in the world that I'm going home with, as you like to say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so just to put it into real perspective, I flew all the way to Orlando, Florida to compete in the AKC Agility Invitational with Zest, who's brilliant. She knocked the first bar in the first run and we were out.
Mm.
But did I care? Yeah, I was upset. But then I was just like, it's okay. Now there's no pressure and just have a blast with my dog, which is exactly what we did. And I had a brilliant time. So that's why this all came up, because it made me realize how much we put on these poor dogs and we get so upset when they're just doing their best. And more often than not, they make a mistake or we miss a hide is because we either didn't cover the search area properly or we didn't read some real subtle nuance in the transition between the room to the outside, or we just didn't, we missed a head check.
I wanna move on to the, other 3 factors because you said there are really 4 things, but there's one more thing about pressure on the dog from my experience that I wanted to share. I didn't think, that what I was doing in the search was impacting my dog for a long time. And people kept telling me, like, "You've got a really sensitive dog," but I didn't think so. I thought, "Wow, he's just focused on odor, blah, blah, blah." I've come to learn as I've spent more time in the sport and more time with my dog, yes, I do. So I just wanna warn people, if you think, the things that I do, whatever they are, whether that's putting pressure on your dog or whether that's you just start acting weird, your dog is picking up on it to different extents. Every dog's a little bit different, but don't think that they're always immune to it. So I just want to tell people to be a little bit more critical, I think, because that was a lesson I had to learn the hard way. And it's taken me 3 years to learn it. So, maybe I can save somebody some time.
Well, and I think each dog's different. You see, Zest is she's just a bomb. She doesn't care. But Tabor does. So if you ever see me running her in scent work or obedience or agility, actually, she yawns on the start line, and so I yawn back at her, and she goes, "Oh, you're stressed too. Okay, well then we'll be stressed together." And then she's fine. Uh, if I yawned at Zest, she'd go, "Are you tired? You're not going to be able to run if you're tired." So
Right.
completely different dogs. But with Tabs, if I yawn at her, she goes, "Oh, we're both stressed together, so let's do this together." And it's a very sweet, sensitive, connected run, but it's very, very different from the flying banana,
That's
who's
so
just not.
beautiful. As I've learned as I've done this, this game is so much about communication between you and your animal, and you just highlighted that again. It's less about finding hides than you might think, and more about so many other things.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is.
Let's
Okay.
talk about pressure on the dog. What are the other aspects of pressure that you wanted to address? What's number 2?
Number two is pressure on the handler. So pressure on the handler to look good, to um, be make sure that they don't make any stupid mistakes like missing a whole area. And I think that this whole thing about looking good and all of that is just it's just the nature of dog sports, and we've put it on ourselves, and it's really um, doesn't help. If you're trying to look good at the same time as running your dog and detective, then it's not really going to help you. And again, it's more pressure on you, which then affects the dog, which then means that the dog needs to calm you down because you're acting weird, and it just doesn't help. And so, one of my students, who again will remain nameless, was used to get so stressed out about detective. She had one more cue to get, and she just couldn't do it. And I said, "Have a glass of wine before you run." And she said, "Okay," and she did, and she was fine. And she just it just took the edge off. I'm not saying everybody needs to drink to run detective or any kind of scent work or anything, but in this case, it was just a glass of wine, and it really made a difference to her. So the pressure on the handler uh, doesn't help, and it doesn't help with the big picture for the dog, because then the dog feels that they have to work even harder to calm you down.
I laughed because, when you said looking cool or not looking stupid, that is such a motivator for me in my life beyond dog sports, right? I don't wanna look stupid out here. wanna look cool. That's something else that I've ran into myself because I had a dog that early on, a lot of people would be like, "Oh, I love that dog. You guys are such a great team," you know? So then as you move up, you don't wanna let them down. You in a way, you put that pressure on yourself, which is just dumb, right?
There's a lot of instructors who, like, I train in obedience with somebody who was born doing obedience. You know, she's been doing obedience since she was 11 years old, and my agility instructor has been doing agility since she was 10 years old. You know, so and I've been doing set work for a long time. So to me, it's just easy because I've been doing it for so long. It's like an old pair of slippers. Whereas for me to do obedience is really difficult because I've only been doing it for a year. So I'm way, way, way out of my comfort zone for that. And I feel I have this whole little scenario that I do to make me feel better so that I don't look stupid in the ring. You know, I dress up, I wear makeup, I wear jewelry, which I really don't normally do, but I do it for obedience because it makes me feel different.
I wanna dig into okay, so I wanna dig into some strategy you've seen that people have done to put less pressure on themselves as a handler, and I'm gonna share what was a game changer for me just recently. But what are some of the other strategies? So, like, it wasn't scent work, but you get all dressed up. What does that do? How does that help you? Like, should other people put on a suit and a tie when they go do scent work then if they're putting too much pressure on themselves?
Maybe I mean, I feel that I look good. So I have pants that match Tabor's coat, so that if she's slightly out of position for healing, you can't really tell. And she wears a pearl necklace as her collar, and I wear pearls as well. And then I wear
Oh.
makeup, and it's just like, and I have, you know, and it's just a big thing. And it's a ritual for me to get dressed to go into obedience, and I like it.
Can you, though, articulate what that does? It takes the pressure off you as a handler?
Yes, it makes me feel special. It makes me
Okay.
feel that I've made an effort to show up with my dog in a competitive, what's the
So
word?
if nothing else goes right, you feel special because you were dressed up.
Yeah. And the judges notice, they go, wow, it's the girls with the pearls. And I go, yep, here we are. And it just puts me in a really good mood. And I look at Tabs and we yawn at each other and go, let's do it. And we do.
Okay, so I this is through my interpretive lens here, what you just said. One of the things I do to take the pressure off myself or relieve my own stress in rounds is I usually will chat the judge up for, 15, 20 seconds. And I'll have a little fun with them before we start, and that relaxes me. Like, I'll be like, "All right, what's the caper? What do we got going on here? What's your devious plan?" And if I can have a laugh and have a little something like that, that helps me, and it sounds like when people talk to you and like, "Whoa, it's a girl with the pearls." You get to have that kind of experience maybe that helps as well.
Well, it becomes, what it does is it opens up a conversation with the judge, and
Ah,
and you're now they're rooting for you because you've made an effort, and it's the same. And I remember judging you, and you had that whole banter with me, and I said, you know, you need to have the balls to call it, Scott. And it's it it makes it personal, and it becomes this really pleasurable experience that in obedience, you know, it goes on for 6 minutes. So it's a whole package, and I think it's important. It's important for me, uh, and I think, you know, when we have exhibitors like you who come up to the line and chat us up and go blah blah blah, you know, what devious plan have you got for us? How many threshold pies can we possibly set, Penny? You know, it's kind of fun, and it makes it more that you're present and enjoying the process instead of just showing up.
yeah, and that has to have an impact on the competitor's personality when you do that, or just even their chemical makeup, in that moment. It reduces stress or whatever. So yeah. All right, so I'm gonna tell you what I do to take the pressure off because I look stupid, wanna look cool. Those were all driving factors. And it actually stressed me out so much that I stopped wanting to do the sport for a while because it was too much pressure and I didn't like it. So I changed my whole philosophy, and my philosophy is two simple things. When I leave, I want anybody that watched to think one thing, and that's, wow, they had fun. That's all I'm going for, is they had a good time. So chatting up the judge a little bit. If there's a foible, it's like, wow, you sourced that food all the way from over there, huh? All right, well, let's keep going. We're gonna have fun. I'm gonna reward my dog, and I want people to go, wow, he has fun rewarding his dog. And then internally, it's cover your space, cover your area. Those are my only two rules when I go in now, and it's been a game changer for me.
Well, and what's so valuable is that you went through the process and you came out the other side. So a lot of people don't come out the other side and they say stuck and panicking. And I'm just like, if this makes you sick or you want to throw up before you do a search, then maybe it's not the thing for you. You know, not everybody needs to compete. Not everybody. I have a couple of students who I think would just throw up if they went into a competition. So I said, come and do some work, but just don't compete because it's not worth it to be feeling ill. How
Right.
fun is that? You know, it's no.
Or if it's making you feel like that, maybe analyze, is there a way that I can is there something I'm doing that's doing it, and can I stop doing that? Like, for me, I was lucky enough that it was actually something that I could stop doing. For some people, I realize it might not be anything that they can do. It just might be just, who they are, that they're not gonna wanna compete, so all right, so we talked about handler, our pressure on the dog, pressure on ourselves. What's the next one? Number 3.
Clubs, pressure on the clubs. The
Mm,
pressure
okay.
on the clubs to put on these trials when they may not have enough of a location to do what they're trying to do. I think that I'm seeing not here, because we make such an effort to get really cool locations, but around the country, these locations that are being used, they're not correct. You know, often the interiors are not correct, and yet the pressure from the public to put on these trials and have scent work trials and offer interiors when really they they can't. They're set wrong, and they go ahead and do it anyway. And it's just really disappointing. You know, an interior has to have four walls. It can't be curtains or an obedience barrier. It's just not right. And so the class is set wrong. And then people get lulled into this false sense of security of thinking that's what it's really like. And then they come to a trial where it's set correctly, and it's a very different game.
What is causing this pressure on clubs? Is it just because Scentwork's becoming so popular now that clubs are kind of doing that? Or what's your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
I think so, and I think that maybe they just, they try really hard to get these locations, but if they can't get the right interior locations, then maybe they shouldn't offer interiors,
Yeah.
and maybe offer a double exterior instead. You know,
Mm,
I feel that it's diluting the sport, and it's just and it I get very frustrated when I see this stuff because it means that it's just not set right. And I'm a real rule follower, and I get disappointed when people sort of cut corners. And I don't think it's intentional. I think they're just trying to put on trials. But I feel that there's some gap somewhere or lack of control from the AKC to make sure that these trials are set correctly.
right, right. I have limited experience with, being a trial chair, and I am also shadowing judges because I want to become a judge. So I've seen some instances of this, I think, and I'm gonna add one more, that sometimes the clubs or the people associated with the clubs don't quite understand the rules as well as they should. So they don't even know that they've given a judge a spot that, like, isn't, that just won't work. But now we've promised it, so we have to make it work in that situation. So I think a little bit of education too is important.
Yes. Well, and we had an incident, it was somewhere in the country, and it doesn't really matter where it was, where another judge saw a, a master interior be set wrong, and they stopped the class and had to rerun the entire class because it was set wrong. And I think that was really good. That's what should happen.
For me as a future judge, if you end up at a club though that there just isn't an option to run it exactly the way it needs to be ran, what do you do then? Like, you can't just pull interiors off, can you? Just do you just make the best with the situation you've got and just try to educate so it doesn't happen again, or what?
Well, the clubs are supposed to provide you with pictures and everything of the search areas, 90 to 60 days before the trial. So you should get all the information beforehand and say, well, actually, that doesn't really look right. How can you have these interiors with no walls? It's not
Got
what
it.
the agency says.
Yeah,
Does it
yeah.
make you popular? Now, here's the other part is that people want to be hired as judges. So if you're unpopular and you say, well, actually, no, this isn't right, then you're going to become unpopular and they're not going to hire you again. But for me, I'm more into the purity of the sport being set right. Please don't get me wrong. I think the clubs are doing a great job. I just think that we need to try to, as scent work gets so big, it's the only sport or one of the only AKC sports that's increased and had 13% increase last year. Um, that we need to just keep getting it right.
Yeah, yeah. As I think as I'm approaching, how I might handle those situations, I think I see some judges get really frustrated, but I think it really truly is sometimes the judges, they're the experts on the rules. And, the clubs and the trial chairs should also have a pretty good knowledge of them. But sometimes, they miss something, or it's a new trial chair that didn't know. So I just think being kind and realizing we're all working together as a team to make this experience as good as we can. We're going to make this work the best we can right now, but next time here's the education on the rules, and just being
Right.
kind about it, I think, is probably the way I think I might approach it. So,
I know it's not the ideal, but it would be really great if clubs made sure that they had the right areas for the class.
yeah.
And not offer, if they can't offer interiors, don't offer it. If they haven't got interiors, don't offer it. Just do a double container instead, and do something different.
Let's move on to the fourth one. Pressure on what's the last pressure that we're talking about today?
Judges.
Okay. All right. How are we putting pressure on you, Penny?
The pressure. Well, I'm not going to speak for me so much, but the pressure on the judge, especially for the new judges, to set super sexy, cool searches is not really the answer. Super sexy doesn't really mean it's a good hide. So there's a lot of pressure to be a popular judge and to set fun searches. And what a judge may think as being super sexy may not be. It may just be not well thought out, or not particularly stable. And so I don't set super sexy hides actually ever. My hides are pretty boring. I do super sexy hides in class that are completely off the rails, but for a trial, no. I really try to keep it simple and um, and clean for the dogs. But there's a lot of pressure on these judges to set, because they want to get hired again. They want to do these super sexy searches that they think are really cool.
Where does this pressure on judges come from? Does it come from but judges feel the competitors are looking for something unique and different and cool, or does it come from the judge themselves thinking, I have to put on a great experience and that means I have to be clever?
I think it's a bit of both. I think there are very popular judges who get hired a lot and have a great reputation, and I think that maybe they have gone through that pressure and have come out the other side and just do what they do. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and then there are new judges who want to be cool and hired a lot, uh, and so they try to do something fun or different, and and you know, it's I don't know. I think it's a bit of both.
Pressure on judges. I think this is interesting because you just said, you have judges that know how to set really fun searches. For me, as I'm training to become a judge, that's what I want to be known for. I want to set fun searches, right? And maybe part of this pressure on judges and as I'm processing how I want to approach my judging, what is a fun search? And sometimes we think a fun search is something that's really super unexpected or tricky. And there's probably 12 other things that's gonna make a search fun. And maybe the search is just gonna be fun based on some factors that are beyond your control. Like, you get really great search areas. To me, that's what makes a search fun, before the judge even stepped in there. This is a fun environment.
Right.
So I need to think about, and we need to think about, like, as judges, to take some of that pressure off, is it doesn't have to be a tricky hide to be fun. It doesn't have to be in a unique location, although I do enjoy that, but that's only one aspect of fun.
Fun for me is watching my dogs have a good time in the search.
Right.
That's what's fun for me. Watching Zest or Tabs fly around the search going, odor, 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 and just like having a really good time, to me makes it fun.
Right.
Um,
And then so there is truth in that. There's a lot of fun going into a search and your dog's just bing, 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 bang, boom, right?
right.
Then there's the challenge of balancing it so it's a level appropriate search too. And for me, there's also fun in my dog solved a really interesting triangle puzzle right there that was well set by the judge.
Yeah.
So it's two different types of things. For a novice search, which the objective is just from a judge's perspective, you're testing, can the dog find and source odor? And I think as a judge, sometimes we can think, well, that's too easy for a novice search, so I'm not going to set it quite that easy, but it's fun for a novice person to go into a search and it's on a chair and their dog gets it in 4 seconds.
Yeah.
And you've accomplished your job as a judge. You've shown that the dog can find and source odor and they've had fun, right? So I think really examining what makes a search fun at each particular level, uh, that's what I just took away from this. What are your thoughts?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And so I expect at like a 95% pass rate in my novice searches. I expect the dogs to go straight in and hit them. Containers is harder because people seem to struggle with containers, but with interiors, buried, and exteriors, I expect them to get it in under 10 seconds. For some reason, containers is a whole other thing, and that's maybe a
Yeah.
whole other podcast, because I have a whole thought about that. Um, but I want them to come back. I want them to think, oh my gosh, my dog can do this. This is amazing. And come back to the next trial, you know, and keep doing it and getting better and better and better. The people get funny about judging novice. They just want to judge master and detective and excellent. It's just like, but I want to judge novice because
Right.
I want to get those people. And I want to say, oh my God, I love your dog. What a cute little dachshund, blah, blah, blah. Did you know that he does a little tail flick when he climbs over? Yeah. And it's like this big love affair with them.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's another thing that makes it fun, right? When you as a judge can give a 5-second thing. Did you know your dog does this when they catch
Yeah.
odor? Like,
Yeah.
that makes it fun for that particular level. So
Oh,
again, level appropriate, yeah.
and it is,
Yeah.
and to me, that's and one of my favorite judging assignments is when I go to Hawaii, and I got to do the first ever judges ed out there, and then I did their first ever trial, and I've gone back every year since, and I've seen them all the way up to detective, and four of them actually flew over from Hawaii in October to run under me in our detective trials here in California. And they did great, and it was just amazing. And I remember when they were little itty bitty novice dogs, but 4 years ago, and it made me cry. Actually, it was
Mm.
just really emotional, and they said, "Well, we remember, way back 4 years ago when you said you told me my golden retriever was super cute," and I said, "Fuck, he is."
Such an interesting role that, as a judge to be that I would not have considered could also it's about an experience. You and I have talked about this before, and we gotta wrap up because boy, we sure can talk, can't we?
Mhm.
Um, it's about an experience, right? And that's not always the actual search. It's everything before, everything after. It is what's during as well. So
Yes.
that was a really useful conversation for me to think about as I become a judge, like how I can approach this to remove some of that pressure and still make sure that I'm doing things that is fun and, contributes to the experience.
I'm so pleased we did this because it's a conversation that not many people want to really hear. But I think all the points we made are pretty valid.
I think so too. It's been a great conversation, and we didn't even get to the third one I wanna talk about. I wanna talk about sometime about demo dogs, because I
Oh,
wanna talk about from a perspective of a handler who's maybe been asked to run a demo dog, what that looks like. Is it different than when I'm competing? I wanna, dig a little deeper into your, philosophy on how you use demo dogs, what you're looking for in a demo dog, because I've learned a few things about that I think could be helpful, and I'm sure you've got just a ton of insights as well. So,
I would love to. You know where I am. I love doing this, and I think another thing we should talk about at some stage is containers.
okay, absolutely.
I have a
You gave
whole
me a
I have a whole hour on containers.
you gave me a container tip one time that I haven't been able to execute as many times as I'd like, but when I have and when it's worked, it's made those situations where it's the lines of containers, which stresses all of us out as handlers because we like circles and we like U's because they're easy. But
Lines.
those lines, right? But you gave me a little tip that is just like, this is brilliant. And like I said, I have a hard time executing it all the time, but when I can execute it, it's just so much fun. So we'll talk about containers and we'll talk about that as well in a future episode.
Okay.
All right, Penny, thank you so much. I wanted to ask another lightning round of 7 questions, but we're going to forego that. I came up with a whole bunch of new questions, but I do want to ask one question that I want to see what your answer to this would be. If we made a Penny Scott Fox t-shirt that had a saying on it, what would that saying be?
Oh, come on. The balls just call it.
It would be okay. What would the second follow-up to that shirt be? You're
Oh,
right.
don't make me call Penny, which would be, or my trial team would be for any exhibitor saying, "Don't make me call Penny."
Okay. And what does that mean?
Well, if they're being naughty or they're being really annoying and they won't listen, then the volunteers will say, "Do you want me to call Penny?" And they go, "Oh,
Oh,
no, 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 it's okay, we got it."
all right, there you go.
You
Penny.
know, trust your dog is used too much. I
It is.
see
It
that,
is.
but I
I
think,
I
and I
Yeah,
think
go ahead.
having the balls to call it. And that's got zest written all over it.
Right. There was another one I heard in this conversation that I want to pull out, but I forgot what it was now. So next time we talk, I'll pull it
Oh,
out and tell you
no.
what it was. Yeah. We'll make a whole series of t-shirts. Penny says, and then it'll be the saying. All right, Penny, thank you so much. It's been great having you on the podcast. So if you like this episode, share it with a friend. You can also subscribe and follow where you podcast or check out our Facebook page, Alert Scent Work. And thank you very much for listening to Alert Scent Work.